So we all know Spongebob, right? The little yellow sponge who's always laughing, smiling, annoying his neighbor, and just all around being a goofy character, with a starfish by the name of Patrick who's his best friend. Well, now that we all have the introduction all settled, I'd like to let you all know that I have, or rather had, a very rare copy of a Spongebob episode that was written by none other than Steven Hillenburg, the creator of the show. I was roaming around Nickelodeon Studios in June 2008. Let me tell you that the tickets to get in there were not easy to get. Anyway, I ran into Mr. Hillenburg in one of the main areas of the studio. No, literally, I ran into him. See, I kind of snuck into a high security area and, well, I ended up alerting the guards and you get the gist. After bumping into him, I apologized. Mr. Hillenburg looked as though he was in a daze. I waved my hand in front of him, but he continued onward past me. This made me a little uneasy. I spotted something on the ground where I had bumped into Mr. Hillenburg. It was a videotape. It didn't have anything of discernible title nor of anything remotely close to what the video was about. No sticker, nothing on the inside of the film protector, nothing. I picked it up and ran very quickly out of the lot. About a week later, after my initial journey by plane back to Chicago, I remembered that I still had the tape. Seeing as I had a VHS to DVD burner that I got for Christmas the year before, I decided to get a blank DVD-R disc and put it into the DVD side of the burner and the video inside of the VHS side. After about 30 minutes or so, it popped out the disc and video. I think that's what they're supposed to do when a disc is done burning. Anyway, I popped the DVD into my computer. I decided to look in the folder for it. There was a movie file that went by the name of Pearl.avi. Pearl? I then double-clicked the movie file as Window Media Center popped up.
Are you ready, kids?
It was a Spongebob episode, I thought to myself. Oh, I haven't seen this show in so long. SpongeBob was one of my favorite shows as a 10-year-old, and hearing the nasally laughter of the sponge would make my ears absolutely sing with joy. Well, metaphorically speaking, of course. There was no title to the episode. It just skipped right into it. It showed the three things I knew and loved about SpongeBob, the three main houses. I smiled with nostalgia as I heard SpongeBob's laughter echoing through the computer speakers. SpongeBob was watching a TV show on his little diver helmet TV. About 5 seconds after, the scene transitioned into SpongeBob's house, and Pearl, Mr. Krabs' daughter, bursted through SpongeBob's door, breaking the door down as she did so. She was seen sobbing hysterically, in a comedic manner, mini waterfalls coming out of her eyes. SpongeBob began to walk over and ask Pearl what's wrong. Pearl replied,
Oh, SpongeBob, it's terrible. Daddy won't talk to me. He hasn't said a single word to me all day. He just sits in his bedroom looking down at the floor sighing.
SpongeBob replied back to her in a bit of a heroic way.
Mr. Krabs? That seems weird. Don't worry, Pearl. I'll go talk to him. You'll go, SpongeBob?
Pearl replied with a look of happiness on her face. SpongeBob then nodded. Pearl was seen hugging SpongeBob and saying,
Thanks, SpongeBob. You're the coolest.
The screen transitioned with Bubbles coming up to SpongeBob, nearing the giant anchor that Mr. Krabs and Pearl live, saying,
Cool, huh? Cha-cha.
And you heard this jazz trumpet chorus playing, a chord as SpongeBob was seen doing a comedically cool stance and look. He then knocked on Mr. Krabs' door. We then saw Mr. Krabs claw quickly, grab SpongeBob and pull him into his home.
SpongeBob, me boy. Glad you're here. I have to tell you something. What is it, Mr. Krabs?
SpongeBob asked.
It's about Pearl. You see, she's...
SpongeBob, confused by Mr. Krabs' stammering, asked,
She's what, Mr. Krabs?
A grim look comes upon Mr. Krabs' face.
She's adopted, me boy.
SpongeBob gasped.
Adopted?
A claw grabbed SpongeBob's lips, as they're seen being comedically stretched forward.
Shh, she might be out there listening. I want you to tell her she's adopted. I can't do it.
Tears began to well up in Mr. Krabs' eyes.
I just can't.
SpongeBob looked shocked at this.
But Mr. Krabs, I can't do that. I would break her fragile heart. SpongeBob, that's an order.
Mr. Krabs said with sadness and frustration in his eyes.
Yes, sir,
said SpongeBob, whilst he saluted and began to run out, panting. I, at this point, was starting to get a bit uneasy. This wasn't the Spongebob Squarepants I knew back in the day. This was something else. Something more adult. Now, even though I liked more adult stuff, this episode just really weirded me out. Telling someone they're adopted is not an easy task, trust me. Horrid results when it's told to you by means of someone whose parents told you to tell that person. The last time I had to do that, I had to coax someone out of committing suicide. Anyway, back to the episode. The screen transitioned back to SpongeBob's house, where Pearl was seen sniffling as SpongeBob popped his head into the busted doorway. Pearl looked up, immediately overjoyed to see SpongeBob.
SpongeBob,
she called out with an excited tone.
Did you find out why Daddy won't talk to me?
SpongeBob said timidly as he cleared his throat.
Yes, I did. What's wrong, SpongeBob?
Pearl asked in a concerned tone. We then heard SpongeBob's thoughts.
What do I tell her? Should I tell her? Or should I lie to Mr. Krabs? No, lying wouldn't do a thing. Mr. Krabs would probably dock my pay to half a penny a day if I did that.
This made me do a small chuckle, as I knew Mr. Krabs as a cheapskate. My chuckle fell silent as I heard SpongeBob just outright say,
Pearl, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're adopted.
Pearl's eyes opened wide, and both SpongeBob and I cringed. I then heard a laugh coming from the computer's speakers. It was Pearl's laugh.
That's a good one, SpongeBob, but really, why won't Daddy talk to me? Pearl, it's the truth. Mr. Krabs had me come over here to tell you. What? No. You're lying.
Pearl then slapped SpongeBob very realistically and stormed out of the house. We then saw Pearl walk up to the front door with tears in her eyes, furious as she pushed open the door forcibly. She saw her father and, holding back her tears, she said,
Daddy, please tell me it's not true. Please tell me SpongeBob's lying.
Mr. Krab began to tear up in a shaky voice and told Pearl,
Yes, 'tis true. When you were a baby and while I was out scrounging around with my metal detector near the outskirts of Bikini Bottom looking for loose change, I stumbled upon your mother, or what were left of her, after the scallops got to her.
It then transitioned to a flashback sequence, which to this day makes me cringe. It showed Pearl's mother's eyes, gouged out, with one still dangling. Her tongue was out and somewhat chewed off. Her fins were only bone and her ribcage skin was ripped off, revealing decaying muscle. Her throat had a hole in it, showing the larynx, windpipe, and esophagus. I turned away at that point, still listening.
I found your mother laying there, morbidly decayed, when I heard a crying coming from nearby. The crying was you. It looked like you had just come out of your mother. I scooped you up, took you home, and cleaned you up. I kept you around for a good 16 years. I felt it were better to tell you now, when you're old enough to understand.
I started crying at this precise point. This became too adult, too real for the happy little show I used to know and love. I wanted to click the X in the top right corner, but I just couldn't turn away. Pearl ran out crying. Not the comedic tears either. These looked realistic, almost human.
SpongeBob, me boy, go after her. These tiny legs won't catch up to her. Please, boy.
SpongeBob nodded and began to run after Pearl, calling her name. Pearl began to run faster, and SpongeBob began to struggle, keeping up. Pearl stopped at the top of a high coral cliff, turned around and told SpongeBob,
Stop.
She put a fin out.
Do you know what it's like to not know your mother? To be with some creepy crustaceous crustacean all your life thinking he's your dad, even though you two look completely different? I mean, how can a crab have a sperm whale for a child?
Pearl's voice got very shaky. She was ready to start sobbing uncontrollably.
I don't think you do. To be lied to all your life, to not know your true family. I don't want to be lied to anymore.
Pearl then began to proceed to fall backwards into the seemingly endless chasm. SpongeBob yelled out,
Wait, Pearl!
and ran down the cliff slope after Pearl. He went as fast as he could, but couldn't get down to the bottom before he heard a loud, disgusting crack. I even cringed at the sound. It was like a bone snapping in two. As SpongeBob approached Pearl, she was seen face up with her head violently pushed to the side. Her neck had snapped. Her eyes were a gray-blue now and were soulless. SpongeBob walked up to her silently, his shoes no longer making that funny squeaking sound. He dropped to his knees realistically next to her corpse and began to sob, humanly and uncontrollably. He hugged the corpse, looked up to the sky, and said,
Why, Neptune? She was too young. Why?
This caused me to sob right along with SpongeBob. The episode cut to black and was finished. I couldn't believe it. Why would Hillenburg make such a demented, depressing episode? I went to bed after that. The next day, after coming home from work, I planned to extract the episode onto my hard drive and put it on YouTube in 2 parts. But when I got home, I saw everything was a mess. Papers were everywhere. My TV was gone. My computer and its accompanying tower, mouse, and USBs I had were all gone. The VHS to DVD burner had been taken too. Oh my god, I've been robbed. Where's the video? Where is it? I said as I began to look for the video that contained the episode. I couldn't find it. That was the only VHS tape I had in my possession, and I guess the robbers figured it'd be worth money. I kind of figured that as well too. So suffice to say, I'm unable to provide a video of the source. Let this story be a warning to you about picking up strange tapes. You never know what you're going to end up watching, or what the results may be.